seems things don't seem to make sense to people unless it's somebody they can feel or they can recognize. But how many times do we need to see white people also get beaten before anybody will do anything?
What does that mean? What does she mean? Like, what do we need to see white people also get beat before anyone will do anything? Can we just stop for a moment? I want to know why all of a sudden white people come into this. Where did that come from? I want to go back. I was going to talk about this later on in the program, but I'm like, I'm going to bring it up now. This issue with who did what. Did you see the story that came out this morning? Because what came out this morning was how the standards for admission and to be included in Memphis police, how they actually had lowered their standards. And this is something that, it was a piece over at the New York Post on this morning. Let me pull this up for you. The piece ran, actually, yesterday evening. And this comes after it came out. I'm pulling, bear with me here. Again. It came out that the requirements for serving on the police force, because you know how police departments have been struggling to make sure that they fill recruitment, right? I mean, you have fewer and fewer officers, and it's difficult. It's difficult for departments to be able to keep officers. It's difficult because, I mean, police officers, they see what's going on. They see what's been happening. So apparently the story, they had lowered their standards for policing for entrance. And that's one of the questions that's being asked. Okay, did this have to do? Like, how did this all fit in together? Washington Standard, a number of areas writing about this. They had hired 2 of the 5 officers that were fired and charged in Nichols' death in 2020. And this was after the reduction in training and education standards. Now, apparently, one of the 2 officers would have cleared the previous requirements. However, the other one had been sued for beating an inmate while he was working as a prison guard. Now, according to the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund, they said that if these times were normal and police departments weren't dealing with so few recruits, this guy probably wouldn't have been hired. That's an interesting point. They said apparently that recruitment was going so poorly that there were signing bonuses that were being offered in addition to lowering educational and fitness requirements. And there was an Action 5 News, they're local. They said that one of the reductions in requirements was that Memphis Police Department recruits, they no longer demanded that they meet the educational requirement of having an associate's degree or 54 college credit hours. They could just get, if they had a few years work experience, that's enough. 15,000 signing bonuses. They used to perform timed physical ability tests to determine level of fitness. They did away with that. New York Post wrote that the department even was waiving, pull this up, that they were even waiving their opposition for felons to join the force, apparently. So you have an issue here where you have police officers, you have too few of them, you've had this whole defund the police movement and everything else, and now you have, as a result, so few officers to serve that you have to reduce your hiring requirements. You cannot tell me that this has not led to this. There's no way I would believe you. You cannot tell me that this did not. I mean, honestly, it sounds like this whole push of attacking the police which resulted in fewer people wanting to serve and standards having to be lowered so that other people who normally probably wouldn't get hired were hired. All of that's culpable in Tyre Nichols in his death. There's no way around it. I mean, when I warn people in the beginning, the defund the police movement, the first thing that's going to get defunded is going to be training. Training will be the first thing that gets defunded. You don't have anybody that wants to serve as an officer anymore, because if you're a police officer, you're protecting and serving, but you also don't know who's going to protect you if you are involved. I mean, you basically have to get shot and killed before the public determines that it is acceptable for you to draw down on someone. There's a difference between obviously good policing and bad policing. I mean, I've heard it before, and it's always from good cops. They loathe bad cops. But it doesn't help when good cops are thrown in the same barrel with bad cops. And it's looked at as the rule rather than the exception. Now, nobody wants to. I mean, look, I've said this before. I know bad cops. Oh, I know bad cops. I sat on stage with a bad cop who tried to blame me for his lazy, fat ass's inability and refusal to do his job and protect people in his community, which resulted in the deaths of quite a few. I know bad cops. Like I said, I sat on stage with one. I know bad cops. Art Acevedo, who used to run stuff down in Austin, because I criticized his opposition towards the Second Amendment, threatened to use his department's resources to watch me. On Twitter, it's still there. It's all public. It's all been saved. So I know bad cops. I've seen them. I've talked to them. I have experience with them. You know who coddles bad cops? Particularly in big cities? Democrat mayors. Guys, I'm talking about are chiefs, and although I think the one down in Florida, the bad cop down in Florida, finally got a cushy job somewhere else. But you have, and it's not different with Memphis. Who you got as a mayor of Memphis? Democrat. Who's a police chief? And a police chief appointed by a Democrat. City council's Democrat. I mean, generationally Democrat. Those are the people that set the standards, that determine the budget, that set the requirements for training. So coming back to my original question, how in the hell is Whoopi Goldberg making this about white people? How is she making it about anybody else? How is it even a race issue? It is an ideology issue. It is the party that supports restorative justice. It's the party that believes in defunding the cops. Oh, except when we need you. Oh my gosh, we're so shocked that defunding the police and spending 5 years attacking them and smearing them and impugning the character of everyone, not just the few bad cops, but all of the other good cops. We didn't realize that was going to result in having to hire bad, untrained people that may or may not beat a man to death on the sidewalk. Our bad. What they think this is going to lead to. And she has the audacity to sit up there. I've co-hosted The View. I know how protected they are. You can't get in the front door without armed security. They got police everywhere. They got their security everywhere. You can't get in the elevator. You can't get up to the floor where the dressing rooms are. And then you can't get to the floor where the studio is without going through multiple layers of armed security and officers. Must be nice to sit up in what is almost literally not necessarily an ivory, but concrete tower and cast aspersions on everything else. Well, white people. It has nothing to do with white or black people. It has to do with bad ideology. She sounds like a racist. And when you sound like one, maybe it's because you are. Bad ideology did this. You can go back. Same thing, my hometown of St. Louis. Generationally Democrat run. Now, who are the people that appoint the chiefs? It's the mayor. The mayor appoints the chief. City council, the mayor, they work together to determine budgets, to determine and work with the chief and sheriffs about standard operating procedures. You see all these stories now coming out. Oh, well, Memphis had to cut this. They had to reduce standards. They had to offer hiring bonuses. They didn't even have enough people. I mean, this is everywhere. That is what led to this. And now, so maybe instead of, and the other thing is making this all about race, instead of actually looking at the ideology that led to lowering standards, led to no training and bad policing. I mean, because it didn't sound like, it didn't look like policing. It looked like UFC out there on the sidewalk. Bad UFC even. Not even artful martial arts fighting, just like a brawl. It was a bar fight that happened out there. That wasn't them being police officers. And that's not in any way how police are trained to act. But when you lower your standards, because you've had one ideology, the same ideology that appoints your chief, the same ideology that determines how your police department's going to run, the same ideology that determines your budget, the same ideology that is responsible, culpable in the crime spike in Memphis. It's that ideology that is responsible. Whoopi Goldberg makes it about race. And by making it about race, you know what you do? You excuse the bad policing. If you want more bad policing, excuse the bad policing by making this falsely and stupidly about race.